High above northwestern Korea, the air is thin enough that engines sound different. A US pilot levels off, scanning an empty blue sky that feels too quiet for a war zone. Then something flashes below him. Not crossing left to right, not circling, climbing. The silver shape is coming almost straight up, faster than anything he's seen before. For a split second, his brain tries to place it into a familiar box. Enemy fighter, turn into it. That instinct is years old, World War II old. So he banks, pulling into what should be a safe, tightening turn. The shape doesn't follow. Instead, it keeps climbing and climbing until it's above him. That's when the pilot realizes something deeply unsettling. Whatever rules he trained for, they don't seem to apply up here. This wasn't a faster propeller fight. This wasn't even the same game. When America and China fought in the world's first jet dogfight, both sides arrived with advanced machines, but pilots trained for a sky that no longer existed. They expected turning battles. They expected time to react. They expected that speed would simply make old tactics better. What they found instead was a fight measured in seconds where one bad decision couldn't be fixed, and instinct could get you killed. Over the next 3 years, above a strip of sky nicknamed MiG Alley, pilots wouldn't just fight each other, they would fight physics. They would fight their own training. And they would learn, sometimes too late, that jets punished mistakes instantly. Because in this new sky, no one had prepared them for what was about to happen. The American pilot steadies his hands on the stick. The jet shudders slightly, not from damage, but from thin air and high speed. His instincts are screaming at him to slow down. That instinct alone tells you everything about the problem, because slowing down in a jet fight is how you die. Every pilot in that sky had been trained by men who survived World War II. Men who won by turning tighter, getting closer, staying in the fight longer. Those lessons were burned into muscle memory. Late 1940s jet training didn't erase them. It reused them. Jets were taught as fighters, just faster. The same dogfights, the same logic, the same expectations. Only now everything happened at nearly twice the speed. Air forces believed the future was obvious. Jets would climb higher, fly faster, protect bombers better, end fights quicker. But no one truly understood what speed removed. It removed reaction time, margin for error, the ability to fix a bad move. In a prop fighter, you could make a mistake and live long enough to recover. In a jet, mistakes arrived already fatal. The MiG flashes past his canopy, not in a wide arc, not in a graceful turn, just gone. The American pilot twists his head, searching for it. That's another World War II habit. Looking for your enemy. By the time he finds it again, the MiG is already repositioning above him, trading speed for altitude like a coin. The pilot doesn't have a word for it yet, but he's watching the birth of energy fighting. Jets don't bleed speed the way prop planes do. They store it. Altitude becomes speed. Speed becomes survival. And the pilot who controls that exchange controls the fight. But none of this was written into manuals yet. There was no doctrine for vertical combat. Boom and zoom jet engagements. Short, explosive firing windows. Pilots were learning mid-fight, often while someone was shooting at them. And it wasn't just one pilot making this discovery. By late 1950, dozens of jets were converging over northwest Korea. American aircraft coming from the south. Chinese and Soviet-designed MiGs coming from bases across the Yalu River. Same sky, same altitude bands. And on both sides, pilots who believed they understood air combat, about to find out they didn't. What made this worse was that the enemy didn't just have a new jet. They had a jet built for a different kind of fight. And it was about to expose every weakness in American expectations. The next encounter doesn't feel like a dogfight. It feels like an ambush. The American pilot never sees the MiG turn in on him. There's no tightening circle, no gradual setup. 1 second the sky is empty. The next, cannon shells tear past his canopy. The MiG doesn't stay. It slashes through, climbs away, and vanishes upward. That's the moment pilots begin realizing something is wrong. The MiG Alley wasn't just another jet. It was built around a single assumption: the fight will happen high, fast, and vertical. Its swept wings favored speed over gentle handling. Its climb rate let it choose when to engage and when to leave. And its guns weren't designed for long tracking shots. They were designed for brief, brutal passes. A few seconds, one burst, then gone. This wasn't a turning fighter. It was a predator that struck once and disengaged. American pilots tried to respond the only way they knew how. They pulled harder, they tightened turns, they bled speed trying to stay with the MiG Alley. And every time they did, the MiG Alley climbed above them, not because it was smarter, but because its pilots had been trained for a different fight. Many MiG Alley pilots over Korea weren't rookies. Some were veterans of World War II, but from a different air doctrine. Soviet training emphasized vertical maneuvering, hit-and-run attacks, strict discipline in disengaging. They didn't chase kills, they chased position. Meanwhile, American pilots were still rewarded for staying aggressive, staying close, staying in the fight. Two philosophies, same sky, only one fit jet combat. The results showed up fast. American bombers, slow, massive, and predictable, started taking losses, not from swarms, from precise high-altitude attacks that escorts couldn't always stop. Daylight missions became too costly. B-29 formations that once ruled the sky were suddenly vulnerable. And for the first time since World War II, air superiority was no longer guaranteed. This wasn't about one aircraft being better. It was about time. Jets compressed everything. Decision-making, positioning, survival fights weren't decided by endurance anymore. They were decided by who entered the fight correctly. And America realized it was teaching pilots how to recover from mistakes, instead of how to avoid them entirely. Pilots started hearing rumors: a different jet, a faster one that could finally meet the MiG on equal terms, not by turning tighter, but by playing the same vertical game. It wasn't here yet, but its arrival would force pilots to unlearn everything they thought they knew. Because the real story of the world's first jet dogfight isn't who shot down who, it's how both sides had to rewrite air combat while flying at the edge of human reaction time. And the lesson came fast, too fast for some. When the new jet finally reaches Korea, it doesn't arrive with ceremony. No victory announcement, no parade of confidence, just quiet relief. Pilots climb into it already knowing one thing: if this doesn't work, nothing will. The aircraft was built around a different idea than earlier American jets. Not turn better, not stay longer, but control the fight speed. It could dive without locking up, climb without stalling as easily, and most importantly, escape when things went wrong. That last part mattered more than anyone admitted. The first fights aren't decisive. They're cautious. Pilots probe instead of chase. They disengage instead of forcing kills. Every encounter becomes a lesson. A pilot pulls too hard and watches his speed evaporate. Another holds speed and survives. Word spreads faster than orders. There was still no formal jet combat manual, so pilots built one out of experience. Rules emerged: never slow down to finish a turn. Altitude is not optional, it's insurance. If you miss your firing window, leave. What mattered wasn't bravery. It was discipline, and discipline felt wrong to men trained to press every advantage. This wasn't a one-sided education. MiG pilots noticed changes immediately. The Americans weren't falling for the trap anymore. They weren't following upward. They weren't chasing into disadvantage. The sky grew quieter, then deadlier. Fights became shorter. Bursts became rarer. Mistakes became unforgiving. History likes clean numbers, kill ratios, aircraft comparisons. Who won? But this middle phase where nobody quite dominates is where jet combat is actually invented. Not in a lab, not in a classroom, but at altitude with fuel running low and seconds to decide. The same pilot who once slowed instinctively, now refuses to. He lets enemies pass. He climbs instead of turns. He survives fights he would have died in months earlier. Not because he's braver, because he's finally unlearning. By the time the war enters its final phase, jet dogfights no longer look like dogfights at all. They look like brief, violent arguments over position, and whoever argues last usually lives. By the final year of the war, the sky over northwestern Korea feels different. Not calmer, just colder. Encounters are shorter, formations looser, pilots more selective. Nobody is trying to prove anything anymore. They're trying to survive. Both sides now understand the same truth. Jet combat is not about dominance. It's about denial. Deny altitude. Deny position. Deny the enemy a second chance. The old question, who turns better, no longer matters, because turning is how jets die. Pilots still die, not in long chases, not in dramatic spirals, but in one bad pull, one missed glance, 1 second too long in the fight. The sky gives no warnings anymore. After the war, statistics take over the story. Kill ratios are claimed. Counterclaims follow. Historians argue what's inflated, what's missing, what can't be proven. But those numbers miss the real outcome. The war doesn't decide who had the better jet. It decides how jets will fight forever. Pilots return home with habits they can't shake. They think in speed now, in altitude, in exit routes. They teach younger pilots differently. Not how to win, but how not to lose. From these fights come energy-based tactics, vertical maneuver doctrine, training that treats speed as life. Every jet fighter that follows is built around lessons written in Korean skies, often paid for in blood. Somewhere over what used to be MiG Alley, the sky is empty now, but it's never been the same. Because for the first time in history, humans learned that machines could move faster than instinct, and survival depended on adapting faster than fear. The world's first jet dogfight didn't crown a winner. It rewrote the rules while pilots were still learning how to play.